Natalia Lafourcade is a Mexican artist who, if anyone doesn't know, if you're a new viewer, got Album of the Year from me for 2020. She had Album of the Year with the part 1 of this two-parter, 2-volume Un Canto por Mexico album thing. It truly was Album of the Year. We don't be lying in here. It was my Album of the Year, and I think it remains to be that good. It is wonderful. I absolutely adore it. It really just gives me all the good feelings I want from music, and I think even years down the line I'm going to be adoring this. It just has such an eternal feeling to it. Every time I put it on, it just really relaxes me, really reminds me of what I love so much about music. It's just such a one-of-a-kind experience. So of course I was hotly anticipating part 2. Obviously you've got Album of the Year with your volume 1. Obviously it's going to be a big one for volume 2. I mean, I couldn't not be excited as hell for this. It's definitely not the first time she's put out 2 volumes for, a series of albums. She's done this before, and it's not the first time either that, the quality difference was quite noticeable between both as well. So I guess you can kind of tell where I'm going with this here. Volume 2 is a little bit of a letdown for me personally. I don't know if anyone else who loves her music will feel the same way. I really can't gauge what people are gonna think of this one, but it just doesn't have that wow factor that I think volume 1 had. It's a bit weird and strange because I feel like people that loved volume 1 might go into volume 2 and think, well, there's not a huge difference, but there is just something in how I feel listening to this album that is vastly different to volume 1. It just gave me a sensation that not much music ever really seems to be able to achieve, which is why it got such a comfortable Album of the Year last year. But this one kind of feels a little bit by the numbers for her usual standards. I do feel like we're running into very similar things that we've heard her do in the past and on volume 1, just not as exciting this time around. That's the difference. The lovely warm production cannot be denied on Llorona on the opening track though. Really fantastic way to kick things off. I do feel like the runtime is barely even noticeable, and yet it's a pretty long song, so you would expect at some point to feel like you're listening to a long song, but she doesn't really manage to make you feel that way because of her voice. It's always so stunning. There's such a beauty to the production. It's a really great track. Then we run into one of the first minor gripes I have with this album with Cien Años, which has a male feature on this one. A Pepe Aguilar, I believe is how you would say his name. Not exactly a bad vocalist by any means, but he just kind of sounds a bit typical for this kind of stuff. We did see a few, male-female type tracks on the volume 1 of this series of albums here, but it didn't really become much of an issue. I don't think, they weren't exactly bad vocalists by any means. Carlos Rivera comes back on this album too. It's just this time around he just kind of feels a bit there. I don't know what it is about his voice. It just kind of sounds very standard, and Natalia has a voice that I think is just so instantly lovable, and I don't really think he quite matches it, and it just isn't really adding anything particularly new to what we've heard her as an artist do before as well. Alma Mia is a track that the runtime is a little bit noticeable on this one. This is another long track, unlike the first track where, it isn't particularly noticeable. This time around, I will say it is a little bit, but the production is still elegant and sophisticated. Of course, though, has a very nostalgic sensibility to it. Just makes you feel like you're watching a very old Spanish film. Really beautiful track. Another moment that I feel, if the runtime was a bit tighter, I think this could have been easily my favorite track, but still a good song. And that's kind of the thing. A lot of these tracks are good, so it's not like there's a major problem with any of them. They're just not as wowing as I've heard Natalia be in the past. Mon Laferte, who is an artist that I've been repping this year, had one of my favourite albums of the year so far, features on La Trenza. Very much both artists in their bag here, not really adding anything new to their usual aesthetic and their styles, but the results end up being pretty good, so it's not like I can be mad. The track Quererme isn't a song that I have a problem with. It's just... this is like 4 years old, isn't it? Like, Remember Me from Coco, you know the song? Just a bit confused as to why it's included on a 2021 album. Literally 2017 was when Coco came out. Am I missing something here, or am I just a bit confused as to why this is included? I don't know. Maybe there's backstory that I'm not quite catching on here, but yeah, just a bit of a letdown that one of the tracks was used up by this. It's a nice track though. You know, I'm not exactly mad at its existence. It's just the confusion of it being on this album. That's all I'm wondering. Nada's Verdad might be my favourite track on the whole thing. We get Los Cojolites coming back to feature on a Natalia song. They were a huge highlight of Volume 1. Again, you know, I'm saying a lot referencing Volume 1. If you haven't gone and listened to that, please listen to that before you listen to this. I mean, it just makes sense for chronological purposes. You may as well sit through the first one before you hear the second one. But still, they were a huge highlight of that first disc, and the raspiness to her voice here is the character I just think I've been looking for in a lot of these slower paced tracks. It's just got the character that I think she brings to the table that I absolutely love. Love the way it breaks down as well. The instrumental here is just absolutely stellar. Really, really good song. Easily the highlight on the album. And again, just kind of goes to show that what she was doing on Volume 1 probably didn't need to change too much, because this could have slotted into that album really well, and it's ended up being the best track on Volume 2. So kind of goes to show, I think, that, you know, you don't need to necessarily change too many things to make something work. The 2C Sabes track is a re-rendered, new version of the track that we've heard in the past from her. She did this again on Volume 1, a few new versions that were just heightened and given a bit more of a Shazam, if you know what I mean, a bit more of a wabam, a bit more of a kakam. I don't know what I'm saying, but you know what I mean? They just got a bit zhuzhed up. And this is another track that got that too. It's a very inviting and lively version of the original. Really good track again, just has that excitement that I think I was looking for in a lot of the other songs. The celebratory feeling of Volume 1 is missing on this album, and it only really crops up a few times, and I think that was something we probably could have gotten a bit more of on this one. We get another new version of an older song, Para Que Sofría, the acoustic version this time around though. Yeah, it's a nice track, doesn't really ignite anything within me, I'm not gonna lie. It's just a lovely little acoustic track. Not really much to add than that. Probably could have just had this as like a bonus cut or something like that, or maybe just like a B-side. You know, again, did it really need to make the album? I don't really know. It's a frustrating review, this one, because there's not really much bad to say about the album. It just isn't really giving me that same feeling that I expect from her music. And a few moments like this, you know, just another new version of an older track, just make me think, could you have not saved this position for something else? It's the closing track. Give me something big, you know, to think about. But yeah, perhaps expectations were what caused this one, and maybe in a few months' time I'd go back to it and not, you know, feel the same way I feel now. But I do think this does pale in comparison to Volume 1, it really does. But it's still a good album though, all things considered. It is a nice listen, and you can't really go wrong. Anything by Natalia is always going to be at least good, which is why I'm going to go 6.5 out of 10. But I just think in comparison, you know, it is part of the same world, you know, it's volume 1, volume 2. You would just expect a bit more of a closer quality gap than it actually has become. It's a bit wider than it probably should be. It's good though, it's good. And maybe I'm just extra harsh here because it was my album of the year. I don't know. I expect a little bit more from Natalia, all that kind of stuff, but still a 6.5 out of 10 is positive, by the way, just in case you're thinking it's not. It is positive from me, and that is everything I've got to say. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, that'd be fantastic to let me know. And subscribe if you haven't already. Goodbye. Have a good day. Goodbye.